Good morning. I'm glad to be able to join you via video in lieu of being able to be live with you in the service this morning. I think at this point you probably know we are erring on the side of caution due to some exposure that I had to the COVID virus. And so to try to make sure that everyone's safe, we opted for this format of being able to provide sermon this morning. So I'm really thankful to have this opportunity to share with you. And of course, the sermon this morning originally was, "Where is your church?" And maybe at this point we should adapt the sermon to, "Where is your minister?" Oh, I forgot. I do have something to help with awkward moments like this where I need laughter. I kind of have a laugh prompt here on my phone. So let's try that again. Where is your minister? All right, that helps me imagine your laughter anytime I make my corny jokes. So that'll get me through this very awkward experience of trying to record and imagine being with you in person, which is a painful thing not to be able to be there with you. Richard or someone from worship this morning would have read the encounter that Forest Church shared in his book about being asked the question, "Where is your church?" And standing in the middle of a bookstore, he recognized that I'm standing in a church. I'm literally surrounded by a wealth of human knowledge and discourse. And he exclaims that it's a cathedral, a human experience of being connected to something very sacred in that moment. So the response to the question, "Where is your church?" is essentially I can create it, a sense of church in any space whenever I'm surrounded by this kind of experience of deep connection and deep sense of the sacred in a sacred space. So what does it mean to be connected to a sacred space? What does it mean to create a church for yourself? And I think that's the question to wrestle with this morning. Where is your church? We have several people that have seen the title of the sermon, whether it's printed in the program last week or in some of our publications of announcements. And so I've gotten different texts that said our church is still on Hayward Street. So that's where it is, still at the corner there. So treating me as if I've lost my mind a bit, which, is pretty safe bet on any given day. And I'm applying the laughter there, but hesitant laughter. And anytime I talk about losing my mind there. But the question of where is your church is one that you and I have to wrestle with all the time, because there's plenty of people that go to church and have experiences of a organized church that don't actually have an experience of church in the sense of feeling like it's a place of safety, a place of connection, a place of ability to practice and connect to something greater than themselves. So we have to wrestle with that question, especially as Unitarian Universalists, of where is your church? And to recognize that there are other religions that say church or a sacred space is created by the deity being in that space, and recognizing that our attendance in that space is absolutely necessary, or at least required for membership to be a part of this particular faith tradition. You must come to this, make your pilgrimage to, whether it's on a regular occasion, yearly, or on a every Sunday type occasion, you make your pilgrimage to this space to say that you have come to the church that is the sacred space. A lot of times people come up to me and say, sorry, I haven't been at church in a few weeks. And then they'll go on to tell me what they've been doing. I've been traveling. I've been at the beach. We decided to take 2 weeks and drive across the country. That's why I haven't been to church in 2 weeks. And my immediate gut response to that one is to celebrate anytime, especially growing up in a faith tradition myself, where I was made to feel guilty for not attending church regularly, or I feel like I was doing something wrong when we didn't go. There's a part of me that celebrates when someone says, I didn't go today, which is a weird thing to think about as a minister. But my first gut reaction when I hear someone say, I'm not going to be here a few weeks, is good for you. I'm glad that you're able to take a break from what may feel like a requirement of being here every Sunday. But then as I listen and hear the things that sometimes pull us away, I decided to take a break I was worn out, and I just stayed on my back porch this morning. And all I can think when I hear those moments of what sounds like excuses or the reasons, the rationale for not attending church, is to think, you attended church. You were in your space where you felt something sacred and something deeply connected to you as an individual. And so the question then is, what does it mean for us to create church for ourselves, and where is your church? And I truly believe that one of the telltale signs that you have created a sense of church for yourself is that you are deeply connected to yourself as an individual. The sports writer Craig Sager, after he was diagnosed with cancer, began to write what began as a journal that turned into more of an autobiographical experience of his journey with cancer. And in that book, he tells a story of coming home from his cancer treatments and deciding to take a walk home from those cancer treatments to help him with his physical strength, but also to kind of build up that space of grieving and trying to process what he had just experienced. And he noticed every time on his way home, he would cross a store that had a train set. And he found himself just stopping in those moments when he crossed that path of that toy store and just watching the train set. For him as an individual, it connected him back to his youth, to a very special and sacred time in his life, sacred moments as a child. But it also helped ground him in those moments to a deep connection of himself and a calming sense of himself. And as he describes it, an invitation to the bigger picture of his life, that his life after his diagnosis with cancer had gotten hyper focused on the experience of dealing with a disease and trying to experience a cure, trying to experience remission, trying to think about longevity of life and negotiating that on a constant basis. And so his life had become so hyper focused on these present moments of dealing with this disease that the moments when he allowed himself to stop and watch the train set was an expansion of time. It brought him back to the deeper story of himself, connected him to people in his life that were only a part of memory now, and connected him to this deeper part of himself. And our minds have that ability to do that, to find spaces where we know we are deeply connected to ourselves as an individual, that we are so in touch with who we are that, as Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi in his book entitled The Flow says, we absolutely transcend time, that we are in those moments and those experiences where we are in the flow. We are so deeply connected to who we are as individuals that we've lost sight of the present moment. And those moments can become church for you and for me. Sometimes I see that look on your face during sermons, and maybe you're giving that right now and I just can't see it, that you're absolutely so caught up in the moment of wishing you were somewhere else, that you are so deeply connected to yourself and your experience, and you transcend time and space. Joseph Campbell says about our sacred space He writes that your sacred space is where you can find yourself again and again and again. You really don't have a sacred space, a rescue land, until you find somewhere to be that's not a wasteland, some field of action where there is a spring of ambrosia, a joy that comes from inside, not something external that puts joy into you, which I think is really important, not something external that puts joy into you, but a place that lets you experience your own will and your own intention and your own wish, so that in small, the sense of a kingdom or something greater than yourself is there. And he writes that I think everybody, whether they know it or not, is in need of such a space, that place of deep connection to self is the answer to where is your church. Anytime I think about our minds and our soul's ability to create that space for ourselves, it reminds me of Viktor Frankl and the development of logotherapy that describes an experience of being in concentration camp and some of the most horrific experiences that humanity has dealt with. And in those moments where he was starving to death and weak from energy and unsure whether he was going to live to see another day, completely separated from his wife and his family, alone, connected only to other people who were in the same dire situations that he was in, as they would go out and work in the fields, and as he described, just breaking up rocks uselessly. Frankl says that in those moments he found the ability, when breaking the rocks uselessly, to actually imagine being in the garden with his wife. And so every time he swung the tool, whatever tool they had given him that day, instead of feeling the futility of the life that was actually his experience in the camp, he actually imagined a life in the garden. With every swing of the tool, he was digging and planting and celebrating and enjoying life, and therefore able to create in the most horrific situation a sense of church, a sense of sacred space in this space, knowing that he was deeply connected to himself, and even though separated geographically, connected to his wife, connected to his family, connected to something that was helping him have a sense of peace in that most difficult of time. So I really do believe that our minds, our souls have this keen ability to create a sense of church, to answer the question, where is your church? And sometimes even in the most horrific of situations, we can find that sense of connection to ourselves. But obviously, another impact of being in that place of church is to recognize that we are connected to something greater than ourselves as well, to recognize that we have the ability to allow our minds, whether we think about it being God or we just recognize that we are part of a bigger world or a bigger universe or a bigger story, to realize that we are more than just ourselves, but that we are connected to something greater than who we are as individuals. I really enjoy the writings. They're difficult to read at times, but I enjoy the writings and have for a long time of Toni Morrison. And one of the things I love about Toni Morrison is her ability to create a sense of church in whatever geographical location that she finds her characters in the stories, whether it be the streets of Harlem or an oppressive home somewhere in the backwoods of the South. She is able to create out of that geographical space and describe with her narrative and her imagery a sense of church that really connects to her Catholicism that was a part of her youth, and using those images of church growing up and blending them into the geographical locations in her books and surrounding her characters, and giving them the sense that even as they deal with isolation and complete disconnection in their lives, that they are experiencing something greater than themselves, something that transcends who they are. So I think you know what that place is for you, whether it is at home, which is great. If home can be that place where you feel connected to yourself and connected to something greater than yourself. I know there's a lot of us here that enjoy the outdoors and find our abilities among the trees and among the animals and among nature, among the skies, a beauty of the clouds and the sun and the stars, to feel deeply connected to ourselves, and in those moments deeply connected to something greater than ourselves as well. In a few weeks, we're going to celebrate the blessing of the animal service, which really is a deep connection back to St. Francis of Assisi. And St. Francis was known for creating a sense of church in the woods, where he delivered sermons to the squirrels and the birds and the trees, all of nature that had come to listen, and blessed those animals as he allowed them to bless him as well. And we'll celebrate that experience in just a few weeks when we do our own blessing of the animals. But we know what that place is. We know that place of that we have to go to settle into ourselves as individuals, to settle into our sense of being a part of something greater. We know what that place is for us, whether it's by the ocean or in the woods, whether it's home, whether it's going back to a place, a location, a meeting place. We know where that place is that grounds us. And I love what Joseph Campbell says: if you don't know what that space is and you haven't found that space, then you at least need to acknowledge that every person needs it, whether they know it or not. So I think the obvious question that comes then in a sermon around essentially saying that you can create church anywhere. That is what Forest Church is saying, and it's ultimately what I'm saying today, is that you can create a sense of church anywhere. You can create that sacred space anywhere. So the logical question then comes to, why do we come to church? And I'm going to hope that the recording doesn't cut off at this point, because that would be unfortunate to say I don't have an answer to that. But I do think it's interesting. And Adam, I'm not one that thinks that life's kind of orchestrated and planned out, but I do think it's at least an interesting reflection on a day where I have tasked myself with talking about why we should come to church, that I'm not there. And it does remind me of just a few short years ago of this is what church was like every Sunday, that we, the difference being that I was preaching in front of a computer screen, and we did have opportunities to talk to each other through these virtual formats, which were life-giving during the time of the COVID pandemic. But even with all of the ability to do that connection, so many of us felt so alone, so isolated, so disconnected, and even to this day feel that way. And I know that as we are dealing with surging numbers in COVID again, the fear of moving back to that isolation is a very real and powerful experience. I saw that our governor this week said that this state, no matter what the country does, this state will never return back to masking mandates and closing schools and all of that. And I think, most of that statement is politically driven. But I began to listen to that, and one of the things I heard as he was talking was fear. And I do think he is voicing a real fear of we can't go back to that sense of isolation and disconnection. We know what it has cost us as individuals and as a community and the cultures across the world. And we just can't go back to that. And I think the pandemic taught us that we are not meant to be creatures living in isolation, that we need connection and community. So can we create church anywhere? Absolutely. And at the same time, we absolutely need community. So why come to church when we can create church anywhere? And for me, that's the answer, that we need this place of connection and community to each other. We need to be around like-minded people who share our values, who stir up our compassion and our courage and our ability to make a difference in our world. We need this place of community and connection. I don't think it's a mandate spiritually to attend church every Sunday, but I do think it is a need of the soul to be a part of a community, whether you find it in a congregation like this or whether you find it somewhere else. I absolutely think that we need to feel connected to other people in community. And ultimately, I think as I talk to people all the time about why do you come to the UUCC? It is rarely about sermons. Sometimes it's about music because we do have some awesome music, and Anna does a tremendous job of leading and nurturing all the talent in our community. But the overwhelming answer I hear all the time is, I need this place. I need to be connected to people. It meets a need for me that I can't even maybe articulate or really understand. I need this sense of being connected to other people. And I think our narcissistic tendency is always prevalent enough in our minds that we actually need other voices in our life, other perspectives, other paths of wisdom, other ways of understanding. We need people to dialogue with, to disagree with, to agree with. We need people to have conversations, and we need to feel a sense of joining together and knowing that we can join together and make a bigger difference in our world than we can when we're trying to fight injustices alone. We need this sense of connection and community. So can we create church anywhere? Can you create church anywhere? Absolutely, you can. You can create a sense of sacredness and a sacred space for yourself anywhere that meets that need of helping you feel deeply connected to who you are as a person, but helping you also connect to something greater than yourself. But we also need this place of the UUCC that is a gift to our community and our gift to each other. It's not perfect, and guaranteed, 100% guaranteed that at some point, either the sense of church or somebody in the church will let you down. Either we'll have a church service that you don't agree with, or something will be said, opinions will be shared that you don't agree with, or we're human beings, our abilities to hurt each other's feelings. We are not a perfect community, but we are a beloved community of covenant relationship together. And in that beloved community, we meet each other's needs of being connected to each other and not living our lives in isolation, not living alone. I'm absolutely thankful as I was preparing this sermon over the past few weeks and thinking about the work and feeling connected to the UUCC. I am so thankful to have this place of community in my life. And on this day when I can't be with you, it just feels that way even more for me to know that you are a special group of people. Just look around you and imagine what it would be like to not be able to get together with this group of people anymore, and to not feel connected to this group of people. We are a special community of love and values and fighting injustice together as a community, and it's a blessing to be a part of it. So where is your church? I hope you have lots of places that you identify as church for you. And I hope that you know how to find those spaces, but also have the commitment to yourself to create moments where you have those spaces in your life. And I also think it's just great when you are asked the question, where is your church? And you say, it's right there on Hayward Street. Because I think that means this place is a special part of our lives together as well. So on this day where I can't be with you, I'm so glad to be with you and to be able to say, answer the question, where is your church? It's right here with you. Thank you and enjoy your Sunday.